In this video, I'm going to share the schedule and productivity hacks that I use to manage my time as the CEO of Owner.com, which over the past 4 years has grown to a team of over 100 people, tens of millions in revenue, and was recently valued by investors at $200 million. So let's dive right into it, starting with the single biggest key to my productivity on Sunday nights. This is the biggest game changer when it comes to time management because it makes me clear on the most important things to build my week around. I start by asking myself, what's most important for me to get done this coming week? When our biggest investor, Alex Bard, taught me this, it was through roasting me because I remember exactly when it happened. It was our second ever monthly meeting after he had just led our pre-seed round of financing. And I was feeling so proud going into this meeting because all that I'd accomplished since then. I was telling Alex so proudly how many customers we'd signed up, how our product had improved, and some of the big breakthroughs that we'd seen in marketing. And as I was telling him, he cut me off and he said, "Adam, I thought your top priority last month was bringing on a great new engineer." I was shocked, but I said, yeah, it was my top priority, but then I got so busy with all this other stuff and I got it all done, see? And he said, this is the trap that so many entrepreneurs fall into at this stage, mistaking motion for progress. As leaders, there's always infinite things that we can do in startups that feel like we're making progress. So here's what I'd recommend doing. You list out all of the things that you could accomplish to push our business forward, and then you stack rank them with numbers. Then make sure that at any given point, you promise yourself that you only focus on the top 3. That's why it's called the Ruthless Prioritization list. When I first heard Alex explain this, I didn't know whether it was going to work because my time to that point was constantly reacting to all of the people around me. Our customers asking for things, our team asking me for things, and I would mold my day based on what other people needed of me. But what I realized is that I wasn't able to be as proactive in focusing on the few things that would really push us forward. And that was the genius in Alex's advice. So I started doing it from that day forward, and it's been life-changing. And by the way, this isn't just founder advice. All early team members of startups are faced by this exact same problem, where there's the things that you know could really push the business forward if you were to get them done. And they tend to be the very hard, unsexy things that take a lot of time and that don't have this constant pull for your attention. So promising yourself that the majority of your time is going to be focused on those things that you know would really push your business forward or your role forward, depending on where you are in the business, is vital. The reason I go through this exercise on Sunday of figuring out what my top priorities are and then building the week around them is that by the time Monday morning hits, all of the chaos begins. People are constantly asking for my attention, whether it's customers or team members or investors. And if I haven't gone through that clarifying process of defining what the most important things are for my week, then I'm subject to being in this constantly reactive state, and I'm not able to be intentional about what those things are that will most move the business forward. So I start with my ruthless prioritization list and then build my week around it. My weekly planning document is one page where I list off what my top 3 priorities are to accomplish for that week, and then the tasks broken down to advance each of those priorities. For example, one of my priorities might be increasing the payments volume by 20%. So the tasks laddering up to that priority could be completing the list first of the biggest things that we could do to increase the average sales volume. Then scheduling an alignment meeting with our sales growth product team to drive the decision on which of those ideas to focus on and brainstorm other ideas. Then the third thing that I could do that week would be testing the top ideas that we outlined with customers' restaurants to validate which the best ones are. And fourth, creating a rollout plan for all of the other customers to benefit from the ideas that we've validated. I'd put them in my weekly planning document just like that, with checkboxes and time estimates for each. Then, once I've got a list of my top priorities for the week and the subtasks to push them forward, I start my daily planning process from Sunday night to Monday the day, where I ask myself, which of these can I fit in tomorrow and in what order? Because the hard reality of the CEO job is that I can't just do those deep work tasks, I've also got responsibility to keep our team aligned and operating smoothly. After I plan my Mondays on Sunday night, my Monday officially starts when I wake up every morning at 5 a.m. So here's what my Mondays look like. They're my internal days to ensure that everyone else is set up for success for the the week before I begin executing on my deep work. My Monday officially starts when I wake up every morning at 5 a.m. I wake up, I hop out of bed, I have a coffee, shower, meditate, and get to working by 5:45 a.m. I hope you caught my language there when I said I hop out of bed. I didn't say I slowly roll out of bed, even though internally that's what I want to do some mornings. I've trained myself to physically hop out of bed the instant I hear my alarm at 5 a.m. and run across the room like a crazy person to turn it off and begin my routine. I believe that those first few seconds of the day set the tone for the rest of the day, and that sluggishly rolling out of bed sets me up to have a sluggish morning. And at 5:45 a.m. I'm ready to go for the day. I start by preparing for my meetings, reading through all of the agendas that people have prepared for me, and then writing out my own agendas for those meetings. My meeting preparation process starts by asking myself, for any given meeting, what outcome would make this meeting feel successful to me? Then I plan my questions and sharing points in that meeting around achieving that outcome. Sometimes the meeting is about driving a decision around something important, and getting the decision is the outcome. Other times it's about ensuring people feel aligned with the decision that I've already made, or supporting people in the decisions that they need to make by providing additional context. When meeting with the people that report to me, the meeting is often at least partially about accountability, which means checking on the status of the goals we set together and ensuring that my teammate is set up to achieve what they said they were going to achieve. Then from about 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m., I budget time to drive to the gym and lift some weights. I found that doing that earlier in the morning ends up setting me up to have a much more successful day, because it gives me not only a feeling of accomplishment and relief that I've done something for my physical health and physical body, but also mentally gets me in a state where I'm feeling primed to have a really great day because I feel more energized. Then my executive meeting starts at 9:30 a.m. We discuss status updates over the most important initiatives that we've got going. We discuss the problems we've observed in the business, and we clarify our shared understanding on how things are operating. Then we solve the problems together through driving fast decisions about the adjustments we need to make in order to course correct and get us on track for our goals. That leads us into our all hands presentation at 10:30 a.m. We host this 100-person meeting with the entire company every Monday morning, and our goal with that meeting is to give every single person in the company complete transparency into how we're doing as a business. And we review all of our key metrics, from our revenue to our growth rate to our retention rate, our cash burn, and more, to ensure that the entire team knows what's going well and what the problems are that we need to focus on. Being this level of transparent is really controversial. When other CEO friends hear about the way that we run our all hands meeting, they're often like, Adam, isn't that stuff confidential? Does the sales rep and customer service rep really need to know what your cash burn rate is and the growth rate and retention against the plan that you set with the board? And my position is yes. Yes, they do. Because we've recruited a team of people who care deeply about building a big, impactful business over the long run. And in order to make the right decisions in building that business, I think they need to know exactly what's going on, the good and the bad. So that's why we share everything in those meetings every Monday with the entire team. The other thing I try to infuse into those meetings is recent customer stories or investor stories, because getting to share the conversations that I had with customers or investors helps the team make decisions with the context that I have and learn with me on this journey, which is a vital part of their success. Every month, we even show the team how much cash we have in the bank account and how that's changed over time, what those factors are, so that we're not just operating as employees of this business, because technically we're all employees, myself considered, but operating with the employee mindset of clocking in and clocking out and just optimizing for short-term incentives is not the way you build a valuable business. The way you build a valuable business is ensuring that every person in that business feels like an owner in the business and is treated like an owner with that complete level of transparency into how things are going that they can use to grow as individuals and leaders. And I see this working. Just 2 days ago, I saw a message from our director of engineering that was calling out that one of our software engineers, Dimitri, took the initiative to optimize our Twilio setup in order to save us $14,000 a year, completely on his own, without being being asked to do that. It was his initiative, which is saving the business money. And I believe where that comes from is Dimitri feeling like and being able to operate as an owner in the business, actually watching the bottom line, actually watching the cash burn, and feeling empowered to do things on his part, even if they're not formally assigned to him, in order to improve the business 1% every day, which he can do as an owner. Then from about 10:30 a.m. to about 5:30 p.m., I have all of my internal calls. They range from 30 minutes to an hour each, and it's usually 7 to 10 on any given Monday. It's back-to-back-to-back Zooms, usually, but I try and push 1 to 2 of them to being phone calls so that I can walk around my neighborhood and get some sun and exercise during the meeting. Otherwise, it tends to be less fun to literally have 8 straight hours of Zoom calls, but sometimes that's just the way the cookie crumbles. Then after a day of Zooms at 6 p.m., this is where you're gonna think I'm really insane, because every Monday evening I have a standing appointment at a cold plunge place. We're talking 42-degree water. And when I say that going into freezing 42-degree water is the last thing I wanna do every single time, there are days where even just the thought of going to a cold plunge after a 12-hour workday makes me wanna cry. Like literally, I feel physical tears welling up, but I force my ass into the car to go to the cold plunge place anyway and to sit in that freezing cold water, because I've realized that it's like a muscle that I have to work on in order to be a great CEO. And that muscle is forcing myself to do the things that I don't want to do, that physically are uncomfortable, but that I know are in my long-term best interest. But that's exactly why I push myself to do it anyway, because I've realized that pushing myself to do uncomfortable things is like a muscle. The more I work it, the stronger I get at doing those things. And that is a key to being a CEO, because there's often tons of grunt work that is really not fun to do, that is the last thing I physically want to do, and yet that is necessary, that I must do anyway. Then I get home from my polar plunge around 7:15 p.m. and shower, wash my face, brush my teeth, and do my daily planning for the next day and read. If I feel freaking exhausted by the end of Monday, that to me is the feeling of a day well spent. Tuesday is the other day that I dedicate to massive amounts of meetings, but they're a different type of meeting for a different reason, which I want to explain. They're what I call external meeting days, which means meeting candidates for open roles that we have, meeting investors to catch up, and meeting customers to learn from them. With candidate meetings, I like to research the person I'm meeting as much as possible. And by research, I mean stalking them online, reading every shred that I can about them, including all of the notes that people have written from interviewing them before me, because I believe that the team we build is the company we build, and that assessing and attracting talent is the single most important thing I do as CEO. So I really put a lot of effort into it. When I'm preparing for these candidate meetings, I've got 2 objectives. First, do I have 100% confidence that this candidate can achieve success in this role based on the scorecard that we've created for that role, where we list out the key objectives that the role is responsible for? And then the second major question I'm asking myself is, does this person complement the culture that we're trying to build, the values that we have? Do they embody these things themselves and actually raise the standard, raise the bar in terms of how we have these virtues internally? So that brings us to the next form of external call, investor meetings. I've been blessed to have some incredible investors that I can learn huge amounts from. But the key with those types of relationships where there's mentorship happening is not putting the work on the mentor to figure out what's most relevant to talk about, and instead doing that work ahead of time through preparing. So the question I'm asking myself is, what would be most helpful to hear this person's advice on, and how do I give them as much context ahead of the call as possible that we can spend this 30-minute to hour-long period together problem solving against these advice topics versus having to give them all of the context and catch up and wasting their time live on that call. I've treated building our investor community much like building our team, where I've picked people based on the skill sets and experiences that they've had that are relevant to our journey that we can continuously learn from. And when I'm preparing for those meetings, I often ask myself, what is it that Parker or Alex or Jack is absolutely world-class at that I would love to hear their advice on? As Vinod Khosla says, the single most important decision that an entrepreneur makes is whose advice to take on what topic. Then that brings us to the third form of external meetings that often happen on Tuesdays, customer meetings. Just like candidate meetings, I think it's super rude to show up with no context, no plan, and just be like, hey, Timmery, what's on your mind? when showing up to those customer meetings, because that just wastes their time. Not just their time, but also your time. My outcome for those customer meetings is often learning from them, asking them what's going right and what's going wrong, hearing their feedback on recent product releases or what we have planned, because staying close to customers is the ultimate advantage in making decisions as a CEO. So those external meetings tend to be from about 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Then at 5 p.m., I tend to go for a long walk where I return calls from internals and do some reflective writing to set me up for my favorite day of the work week, Wednesdays. I'm usually back by about 6:30 p.m. and use that time to plan for the next day, completing tasks for Ruthless Prioritization, showering, washing my face, and sleeping by 9:30 p.m. You might be wondering, Adam, why is Wednesday your favorite day? The reason Wednesday's my favorite day is it's the day of the week where I get to spend the entire day just focused on my top 3 priorities. I call them sacred no meetings days, where I don't take calls and I don't take meetings on Wednesdays unless it's absolutely urgent. This reminds me of one of the biggest keys to my time management success, which is getting comfortable with awkwardly saying no to people. The sheer amount of people that increasingly, as the company gets bigger, are asking for your time multiplies. And I don't just mean people in the company. I mean random acquaintances that are texting you and being like, hey, want to grab coffee? I'm in town. The amount of messages like that you get are literally infinite. Like, I get several every week, and it's freaking awkward at first to be like, I appreciate the invite, but no, I don't want to get coffee. I have a lot of other stuff to do. But you have to get very comfortable with telling people no and guarding your time to ensure that it gets focused on the most important priorities. Otherwise, you could be in infinite external meetings, infinite coffee requests, infinite conversations with random people, and zero time towards your top priorities. That brings us to then Thursday and Friday, which are very similar to Tuesday, but they have both internal meetings and external meetings. That often means design review of upcoming product designs or reviewing important things that our marketing team is publishing. I view my role as CEO as kind of being like a magazine editor of sorts, where I'm constantly having to share direction and opinions on the pieces that other people on our team are writing to ensure that it's all aligned and that we're rowing in the same direction. Importantly, when I have meetings on these days, I book them all back to back to back to back. I don't like hours between meetings because that ends up feeling really bad for deep work. When I can just get all of my meetings over with in one block, it means it frees up the rest of the day to do the deep work that pushes my top priorities forward. So that tends to be meetings from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. each day, which means that I can spend the morning block and the evening block focused on deep work. Importantly, that time about 6 hours after waking to 11 hours after waking is the middle of my waking period, which all of the research shows is the trough of energy for all people. So spending that time doing meetings is great because I don't need my mind to be as sharp for those meetings and can spend the times when I'm sharpest in the mornings or evenings doing planning or forms of deep work. Okay, so we've now covered Thursday and Friday, and I know what's on your mind. You're probably asking, okay, Adam, how do you decompress after that type of week? And I've got some bad news for you folks. They are not about decompressing. My weekends are basically run like some combination of Wednesdays and Fridays. So now the thing that's probably on your mind is like, Adam, how do you not burn out living this way? My position is that burning out is just a self-fulfilling prophecy, where if you tell yourself this story that if you work too hard, your mind's gonna break, you're not gonna be able to do any more work, is just nonsense that only comes true if you believe it. So my position is, if you feel like the work you're doing is making a really positive impact and is energizing, as I feel my work is, then burning out just isn't a thing. And to be clear, I am not judging the people who love to spend their weekends with friends and family and loved ones. Like, I totally get it. I'm happy for them. I respect them. I'm just wired in such a way that I love work. I love the people that I work with, and I can spend more of that time with them working than I'm a very happy camper. And if you're curious about how I think about burnout and the various mental shifts that I've made in order to protect against it, then I made an entire video describing exactly that, titled How I Work 100 Hours a Week Without Burning Out. I highly recommend watching it because there's so many different things I've learned over the past 11 years of working really hard like this that I share in that video. So go check it out.